to all of our phenomenal viewers, listeners, and supporters. I am your host, Billy Gutierrez, and I am so excited to be here. If you are a new audience member, we are so grateful to have you. Welcome to another episode of Connected, where we discuss all things mental health, recovery, employment, and stories. Today's guest is a nutrition and wellness coach who has overcome struggles with depression, anxiety, and OCD. Determined for change, she embarked on a health kick, shedding weight through careful dieting and exercise. Collaborating with her yoga teacher and certified nutritionist, she underwent a transformative journey, addressing emotional triggers and implementing healthy habits. Her empowerment nutrition program is driven to help others discover joy, love, and care and for their own unique lives. You can learn more about her and her nutrition program at thenutritiouspharmd.com. Please welcome Dr. Trang Robinson.
Thank you so much, Billy. I'm so happy to be here.
Very honored to have you here. I know you are a nutrition coach for the Connections House, correct? Or
yes.
you do presentations here?
Yes.
How's that been for you?
It's been such a joy and a pleasure. I was invited into Connections House and all the other satellite sites by Claire, who I met in the community, and we kind of just hit it off. And I told her a little bit about what I did, and she said, you know what, we could really use someone like you at our sites. So she invited me in to give some talks about medication education, nutrition and wellness. And so I've been coming into all the different sites for about 6 months, and we just wrapped up our program, and it's been such a joy and a pleasure, and I've heard such great feedback from the sites. In fact, at the San Pablo site, Ravonda shared with me that my visit was one of the highlights in their morning check-ins the next day. So that was really sweet to hear.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I haven't been to any of your presentations. I've only been to one. Okay. But just because I've just been cooped up in my cave and editing and doing all that stuff. But the one that from what I've seen and like passing by, you bring a very holistic approach and implementing breathing, and definitely like your yoga training has definitely shown within the presentation. And I appreciate that, just because I think the whole breathing exercises and like being present within the moment and just slowing, like, it helps.
Yes.
But yeah, and I also got to try some of that cinnamon and eggnog, which was pretty delicious.
Good. So that was a treat.
Yeah.
It was definitely an indulgence, but we did that for the holidays. And then the last time I was here at Connections House, we did a cooking demo and made some edamame soba noodle salad. So
missed
that one. So yeah, that was fun. And the members had it along with their lunch. So I hope they enjoyed it.
Oh man, that sounds delicious. Okay, let's just get straight into it. So in our show, we like to do like some kind of myths or / misconceptions. So I'll give you some myths, and just if you could just give us some of your expert opinions on this.
Sure.
Awesome.
Kind of like a game.
Kind of like a game show. Game show, yes. First one, low fat or fat-free products are healthier choices.
That's a good one. Well, I think the low fat, fat-free movement came about in the 70s, when it was thought that cardiovascular disease was caused by fat. However, recent research has shown that cardiovascular disease is actually caused by a myriad of other things. Sedentary lifestyle, and nutrition-wise, it's actually caused more by sugar rather than fat. So in the 80s and the 70s, when they thought it was caused by fat, the food industry started making everything fat-free, low fat. So they removed the fat out of their food, but in order to make it palatable, which means in order to make it taste good, they had to add sugar and salt into it. So fat-free and low-fat foods are not necessarily healthier, than full fat options because of the added sugar and salt content. However, I would say if high cholesterol is something that is an issue for a person, low fat and fat-free options of, for example, yogurt or milk, I think is a good option, right? But in general, packaged foods like snacks and chips and crackers and flavored yogurts and things like that, low fat and fat free are not necessarily healthier because they have added a lot of added sugar.
Yeah. So we've been lied to.
We've been lied to. Yes,
oh my
we have.
Goodness.
Yeah.
It's the whole marketing of it's the low fat part that gets people like, oh yeah, like.
Yeah. And the thing is, we actually do need a little bit of fat in our diet. Yeah. We do need fat, but we need the right kind of fat. So we need the unsaturated, healthy fats rather than the saturated animal fats.
And then can you give us examples of the two,
Sure.
the healthy fats compared to the...
So healthy fats are unsaturated, meaning they come mostly from plant sources. So that's going to be avocados, olives, nuts, and seeds. And saturated fats come from animal sources. So mostly red meat animals, such as beef, lamb, and pork. And so, of course, from cows, we get milk and yogurt. So those can come in full fat or low fat. So, for example, if you are a dairy eater and you have high cholesterol or are worried about cardiovascular health, a low fat or fat-free option in your dairy is a great idea. But if you don't have to worry about cholesterol, having one serving of full fat dairy a day is totally fine.
So for someone that is very carnivorous, right? How would you
nudge them in the right direction?
Yeah. Or that mindset, yeah.
Well, if you are a meat eater, and meat sources of protein are your main sources of protein, what I would tell someone like that is to start to incorporate plant-based sources of protein. And if you're eating meat every day, maybe you can just pick one day of the week where you will have just plant-based sources of protein. So for example, tofu is a great source of protein, and lentils and chickpeas and beans are a great source of plant-based protein, edamame, and eggs. Eggs still comes from an animal product, but it doesn't have that full fat, saturated fat that beef would. Yeah.
All right.
So just start with one day out of the week.
Okay.
Right?
Got it.
Yeah.
Will do. All right.
Are you talking about yourself?
Yeah, possibly. Okay. So this whole podcast is just going to be kind of like a consultation, if you will. But yeah, next myth: a detox diet will clean toxins out of the body.
Okay. Well, it depends what detox diet you're talking about. I mean, there are so many different diets out there. So it just depends what you're talking about. But what I think you might be talking about are what are called cleanses. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are things called cleanses where you eat a clean diet for a certain amount of time, and it gives your body a rest from eating those things in our diet that are not so clean, such as alcohol, meat, dairy, caffeine, and sugar and gluten. So those are kind of the 6 things that are kind of not so clean. So when you give your body a break from those 6 things, so I'll just mention them again. That's caffeine, alcohol, sugar, meat, dairy, and gluten. So when you give your body a break from those 6 things, It gives your body a chance to clean out toxins. So if that's the type of detox diet you're talking about, then yeah, your body will clean it out and you will feel the difference. There's other things such as juice cleanses, where you just drink juices pressed from fruits and vegetables. That is also very cleansing. But if you're talking about other diets, like the cabbage soup diet or, other crazy things, I'm not sure. But I'm sure that when you cut out these 6 things out of your normal diet, it gives your body a chance to clean out toxins. Yes.
I've always heard the term, I'm juicing, or I'm just having a detox cleanse. So, and they've always like said like, they just always look very like tired and like, I guess that's all the toxins coming out and just your body's kind of resetting kind of thing.
Exactly. So when you consume these things on a regular basis, what your body does is it gets used to these things. So it needs these things to feel normal. So when you take these things away, your body kind of goes into shock and it gets tired. It gets fatigued. If you abruptly stop sugar or caffeine, you'll get a headache. You'll get tired. You'll get fatigued. And you kind of get what feels like flu-like symptoms, like malaise. So it's weakness. It's tiredness, right? So if you do choose to cleanse and give your body a break from these things, it's best not to abruptly cut them off. It's best to wean yourself off of these things over about a week so that you don't put your body into shock.
That's a better approach to do it.
Yes. Definitely.
Okay, cool. Next one. This one's kind of straightforward. Avoid carbs if you want to lose weight. Big myth.
I would say that's not necessarily true. I would say avoid carbs in excessive amounts because you actually do need carbs. Sure. We need all 3 macronutrients to have a balanced diet. We need carbs, we need healthy fats, and we need protein. But again, it's the right kind of carbs, right? So you want to stay away from refined, processed carbohydrates, such as bread, white rice, pasta, crackers, pretzels, things like that. But whole, high fiber, unprocessed carbohydrates are really good for you, such as brown rice, quinoa, farro, polenta, millet, oats. All of those things are really good for you, but just not in excessive amounts. So your statement is half true. Avoid refined carbohydrates in excessive amounts. Might help you lose weight.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There's so much science that goes into these things. Because usually whenever I go grocery shopping, I don't really pay attention to the labels. And so having this conversation now, I'm like, dang, I should really pay attention to everything that they're putting in.
We should all pay attention. Always turn over the package and look at the ingredients. If any of the first 5 ingredients contain sugar, put it back.
If it looks too colorful, put it back.
And I'll take that even a step further. If there are more than 5 ingredients, put it back.
Okay.
Pretty simple.
Yeah. Last myth. You shouldn't eat anything after 7 p.m. Not even a grape.
Okay. So we are all human beings of free will, and a person can eat anything they want, anytime they want. So that statement in itself is not true, right?
Yeah.
But I think what you're referring to is possibly the idea of intermittent fasting.
Yes.
Is that what you're referring to? Right. So There are a lot of different opinions and ideas about how to do intermittent fasting, and there are many different ways to do it. So the one that you're referring to, I think, is called time-restricted eating, where you give your digestive system a break from digesting food. So what that would look like is you would stop eating at a certain time, right? Say after dinner, and then you wouldn't eat again until the next day at a certain time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the time, though, is totally up to you. Let's say you eat dinner at 6:30 or 7, and you finish your dinner at 7:30, and you stop eating then. And then you don't eat again the next day until, say, 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're giving yourself an intermittent fast of about 13 and a half hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you could stop at 8, you could stop at 7, you could stop at 9. It's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on what time you have your first meal the next day, you can make that fast time 12 hours, 13 hours, 14. Some people do 16, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the statement as to when to stop is totally up to you.
Mm-hmm.
But to say that you can't have something after a certain time, not even a grape, that's obviously not true.
Yeah. Yeah. I've tried intermittent fasting, and it's been a challenge just because my relationship with food, like back in the day, has been like pretty bad, and had bad habits, had bad food choices, and so I guess I always thought like intermittent fasting, it sounds like, oh, I'll lose weight, but it's not about like when. For me, it's like just what you're eating was more important then, because you can still like, yeah, I guess, can you still lose weight if you do intermittent fasting, but the food that you're eating is like totally bad?
Can you still lose weight? Maybe. It just depends, right? But the thing about losing weight is you will lose weight if the amount of food that you bring in is less than the amount of energy that you expend. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it's simple mathematics. You have to bring in less calories and expend more calories. If you do that, you will lose weight.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter what you're eating, right? As long as you take in less than you expend, you will lose weight. Okay? So that's the answer to weight loss. Yes, you will lose weight. But will you be healthy and will you feel good if you're eating junk food? No.
No. Yeah. I guess the reason why I say that is just because, like, as someone who, as a dancer, right? There's a lot of late nights practices, rehearsals, and the only things that are open is like Jack in the Box, McDonald's, and so I've just become like, well, I guess I'll get some fries and that's about it, and I'll still feel full, but in the end, it's like doesn't feel good in terms of like, damn, I did all this energy output, I'm putting back all this like
Right.
toxic kind of
Absolutely.
processed foods still in my body, and it feels like the more steps I take to get better in terms of health wise, that moment I eat McDonald's or something, some fries, it's a step back.
Yeah.
So that mental battle is like
Right.
very
It is. It's very hard. So in that example of only having fast food options available late at night, right? That is something that you have some control over, right? What if you prepared healthy food for yourself so that you had something available for yourself after you finish your rehearsal or your show?
That is true. That is something I've
So it's not like you don't have control over your situation. You do. You just have to take action. Right?
And that's a perfect segue into your program, right?
Sure.
I get Yeah, I've just been reading a lot from your website, and I admire like your story of taking control of your life and being aware of the stuff that you put in, and the holistic approach with in yoga and meditation. And so, can you share more about the holistic approach of the Empowered Nutrition Program addresses both physical and mental health, especially in breaking free from emotional eating and achieving a comfortable, healthy weight?
Sure. So I work with private nutrition clients, and I guide them through what I call the Empowered Nutrition Program. And basically, it is a very individual program catered to each specific individual's needs. And it basically helps a person take a look at their habits. And of course, the context is nutrition. And if there is something that's happening in their life that is causing them, a pain point, like they're overeating and they've gained weight and they want to lose weight and they don't know how to do it, I will help them come up with a plan to achieve their goals. And the program is holistic, meaning it's not just about the nutrition. The nutrition is a big part of it, but it's only 1/8 of the program. Mm-hmm. The other 7 parts of the program include hydration, sleep, stress management, relationships and connections, environmental factors, and what is the last one? Exercise, of course. Mm-hmm. So we take a look at all those things and we set goals, make adjustments, and bring all those things together in the context of nutrition to create a balanced and complete lifestyle change for the client in a way that is meaningful for them and it works with their life. So, for example, not every client's goal is to lose weight, right? Mm-hmm. Some clients' goals are to just find balance in their life, to be able to navigate the challenges of life without completely, getting stressed out. Mm-hmm. Right? So every client has different goals, but I would say in general, most clients seek me out for help with weight loss. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. With that being said, with all the different clients you have, there's also like factors of, financial status, environments, and cultures, especially cultures. How do you navigate when a client comes to you knowing like, getting to know them, right, in their culture, in their background? How do you navigate breaking out of their cultural habits in terms of food?
Everybody comes from a different background, and food, a different background and different culture, and food is a very integral part of every culture, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, I had a Filipino client and, she loved all the really good Filipino foods, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm, yeah. And they're all pretty carb heavy, noodles and rice, a lot of meat, a lot of fried things. And so for her, she wasn't willing to give up these things in her culture, right? They mean something to her. So I would never ask her to stop eating those things, right? Mm-hmm. But what I could do is I could meet her where she's at, right? I could say, I know you're not going to stop eating, pancit and white rice and, all these really yummy things. But what you could do is you could, just eat a moderate amount, just eat a little bit, right? And the general rule or the general rule of thumb that I guide all my clients in is what's called the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the time you're eating a clean, healthy, balanced diet, lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, whole grains, lean sources of protein, and 20% of the time there's room to enjoy whatever foods that you like. Because food for most people is a source of pleasure, right? Yeah. It's a very pleasurable thing that we enjoy in our world, and we want to keep that pleasure. You know, we don't want food to be something that's miserable, right? So 20% of the time, go ahead, eat all the foods that you like. That's totally fine. But most of the time, you'll be eating a clean, healthy, balanced diet. So that way you don't feel deprived, right?
Yeah. It's all about balance.
It's all about balance.
And then also discipline too, to keep on to the 80% too. Getting a hold, like a real grip on 80. Because if you start to loosen up, that 80 becomes 70, 60, 50. Then you're down to like 10 to 90. I'm like, what the heck just happened? Yeah.
Well, you got to really pay attention when you see yourself starting to loosen the grip and kind of let it go, right? And start to fall back into unhealthy habits. If you pay attention to how you feel, like, am I feeling more sluggish? Am I feeling more foggy in the brain? Am I more tired? Have I gained weight? You know, am I less motivated? If you pay attention to the reaction of your actions or the outcomes of your actions, then you'll be like, oh, that's why this is happening. I better, get back on track. Right?
Yeah. And that's something that I've just been trying to learn myself, of just like being aware of, what I do put in my body. And then I've just been, the mental aspect of like how you feel afterward is definitely something I've been trying to learn to be aware of too. And with that being said, earlier I mentioned like my relationship with food. Back then, like during the COVID era, oh man, at first it was like pretty fun because, the first week I was like, oh, I get to stay home, play video games. I get to indulge a little bit. That indulgence has lasted for about some time in some years. And that's definitely taken a toll on my mental health. And I've become I've gained some comfort in emotional eating. And I just gravitate towards emotional eating because have some experience in like your story of emotional eating. And so, because I relate to that and resonate with that, because whenever I feel so depressed and down, I would resort to In-N-Out. It's right. such a delicious drug.
It is.
But to the point where I would like really overeat and feel like very bad. And like there's a little part of me that kind of finds comfort in that to help me feel whatever I'm feeling, whether it's depressed and like anxious. And so, or maybe I'm just bored. And so, with that being said, how did you recognize your pattern of emotional eating, and what steps did you take to break that cycle for your own better mental health and physical well-being?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing that we all need to understand about emotional eating is that we all do it. Every single one of us, to some extent or another. And a lot of us are just not even aware that we're doing it, right? Because it's kind of unconscious. It becomes a habit, right? So the first step in, breaking the cycle is actually awareness. It's to become even aware that you're doing it. And in order to become aware, you have to just kind of take a look at your life, at your behaviors and actions, and identify and reveal the patterns and the triggers that cause you to use food as a soothing way to cope with emotions, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, in your situation, you were using in and out to soothe the emotion of maybe sadness, right? So you would have to identify the trigger. What is the trigger that caused you to feel sad, right? So first, identify the trigger that causes the emotion, and then identify the action that you take based on the emotion. Okay?
Yeah.
And then once you identify the patterns and the triggers, then you can begin to rewire the way you think in those situations and the way you feel. Because remember, thoughts create feelings and actions are based on your feelings, right? So in order to change the action, you have to change either the thought or the feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But in order to identify the thought and the feeling, you have to identify the trigger. Is the trigger because you were, a person was alone and they felt lonely, right? Is the trigger boredom? There was nothing to do, right? Is the trigger stress, right? And a trigger can also be a joyful feeling. Is a trigger being at a party? Is the trigger being at a birthday party or a celebration that causes you to overdrink or eat too much dessert, right? So triggers can be both uncomfortable emotions or pleasurable emotions. And so emotional eating happens when you're eating at any time that your body doesn't actually need nourishment, that your body's not actually hungry. Okay? That's when that's what emotional eating is. So your question was, how did I overcome my cycle? So mine was first the awareness. And so my story also started in COVID because when COVID started, I was too scared to go to the grocery store. So I would send my husband to the grocery store and he would come back with chips and ice cream and cookies and all this junk food. And so I found myself after dinner just eating all this junk food. And lo and behold, after 2 months of COVID, I had gained all this weight. I felt terrible. And I was just like, oh my God, what happened? Right?
Yeah.
And so that was my moment of awareness that the foods that I was eating are causing me to feel bad and further exacerbating my mental health symptoms of depression and anxiety. So when I realized that that was happening, the awareness came, then I personally worked with a nutritionist who helped me learn new habits and a different way of eating and relating with food, which is what I am passing on to others as well in my program. And probably the first lesson I learned, and the easiest one to even start with, that everybody can do, your audience, yourself, I still use it, is what's called the hunger quotient. So it's a scale from 1 to 10 that tells you how hungry you are. So 10 means you're starving, you're going to pass out. 1 means you're stuffed, that you have a stomach ache. So a 5 means you're neutral. You're neither hungry nor full. A 6 means you're slightly hungry. You could probably eat soon. You're starting to feel that sensation. And a 4 means you're slightly satisfied. You could probably eat a little bit more, but you don't really need to. So our goal is to stay between a 4 and a 6 all day, right? So if you're not hungry, if you're not a 6, then it's not time to eat, right? So often I'll find myself, everybody does this. Open the fridge, stare at the fridge, look around, open the pantry. Oh, what's there to eat? And I'm looking around, right? Because I'm bored or, I'm feeling something agitated and I'm just looking around, something to occupy my hands, something to occupy my mouth. And the trick is just to take a moment, pause, and ask yourself the question, am I actually hungry? If the answer is no, if your hunger quotient is not yet a 6, then it's not time to eat. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's the first step, is awareness. And then, then the techniques go further. Then it's like, okay, well, when should you stop? So that's a little bit harder, right? So ideally, we want to stop when we're about 75% full, not when we're 100% full, right? But that also requires you to slow down and to check in with yourself and to check in and say, am I satisfied? Could I have a little more, but my body actually doesn't need to, right? So these are all things these are all techniques that we can do, but it requires one thing. It requires you to pause, right? And to check in and to be mindful of your body sensations, right? What's happening around you and how you're feeling and how you're thinking. And so that's where the mindfulness part comes into the conversation.
No, yeah, for sure. I just thought about like how, especially in a Korean barbecue restaurant, right? There's so much going on, steam everywhere. You're around loved ones, friends, family. You start eating, and next thing you know, you're at like 100. I'm at 110%. I'm like, oh, what happened? And so like that was like before, but now that I've just been like, because of my day-to-day like routines and stuff, I've heard of that whole 80% or like 75% rule where you're trying to just reach to just like, oh, I'm good. Like I'm still functional. I'm still conscious. I don't have a food coma. Right. I'm not like sluggish and everything. And so, yeah, I think I just like to say I've gotten a little bit better. Like when it comes to like eating like at restaurants where you're so stimulated around friends and like the environment. And so, yeah, I appreciate like the whole pausing and just like slowing down. Because back then when I ate, it was gone within 2 minutes. Yeah. And so I'd like, it's gotten better, but I just appreciate the fact that like you got being able to slow down and just really think of the whole, the quotient and the percentage of how much you're intaking is, it's helpful. It's helped me a lot.
Yeah. And not only that, when you slow down, you give yourself an opportunity to get really present with the act of eating. You get to really savor and enjoy your food rather than shoveling it in, right? You get to look at the colors, you get to smell the smells, you get to feel the texture in your mouth, and you really get to engage with the act of eating rather than, like you said, finishing a meal in like 2 minutes. I mean, we can all finish a meal in like 5 minutes easily, right? Yeah. But when you slow down and you kind of take your time and enjoy, it becomes so much more pleasurable, right? It becomes, and And not only that, when you slow down, you get fuller faster, right?
Yeah.
You give your body, your brain time to catch up to the fullness signal in your stomach, and you probably won't overeat
Yeah.
when you slow down.
Yeah, for sure.
So these are all techniques that all come together. It's not just do one thing, but it's all these different strategies and techniques that can help you lose weight and find balance and enjoyment in your food.
I want to get in more into like the relationship between yoga and meditation and nutrition. Can you give us like a little insight of how you approach it, and like if there's any advice that you could give?
Yeah, so like I kind of alluded to before, in order to change a habit, right? Habits are things that are so hardwired in our brain that it just happens on automatic pilot, right? You get a certain trigger and that trigger tells your brain, oh, this is what I do, right? This is what I do in that situation. And it just happens automatically in like a split second. But if it's something that you want to change, what you have to give your brain is a moment of pause, a moment of stillness, so that you can tell yourself a different story in that situation, so that you can break the cycle, right? And so that moment of stillness basically is a moment of getting into the present moment, getting mindful, tuning in with the signals that your body is giving you, checking in with your emotions, checking in with your thoughts. And so when we're in our daily lives and we're moving through our daily lives, we're kind of on automatic pilot, right? We don't really pause, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we practice yoga and meditation, what we're practicing is we're practicing slowing down and pausing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we practice it during yoga or during meditation, we're kind of training our brain to know what it feels like to pause and to slow down, so that when we're in our daily lives and we're moving and there's a moment where there's a trigger, you can say, okay, pause. What's happening? How am I feeling? What are the triggers? And if you see yourself starting to repeat that habit, say grabbing a handful of M&Ms and just stuffing it in your mouth, you can say, pause. Am I actually hungry? If I'm not, what am I feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Am I feeling stressed? If I'm feeling stressed, what alternative action can I take rather than grabbing the M&Ms? I could take 3 deep breaths. I could go outside for a walk, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So coming up with alternatives to the trigger moments. So it's all a practice. And, you know, you're not going to be 100% successful every time, right?
Yeah.
But if you keep practicing and if you keep training yourself, soon those new habits will start to develop, right? So that's the process of change.
Well, thank you, Trang, for all of your insights and sharing your experience and your knowledge. Is there any last words that you want to give to the audience?
Sure. I think the last thing that I would share with the audience is that change is hard, right? We are creatures of habit. We want to stay in our comfort zone, right? Because when we're in our comfort zone, we're safe, you know, things are predictable. And, you know, we as evolutionary animals, you know, we haven't died so far. So what we've been doing must be working, even if that means eating, you know, in and out every night. But if you want to change, it's going to feel very uncomfortable, right? It's going to feel hard. It's going to be challenging. There's going to be struggle. But if you keep practicing, and again, you don't have to be perfect, right? But at least keep trying. Keep trying, keep repeating it. Even if you make a mistake, keep trying and keep doing it over and over and over again. And then someday soon, it could take months, it could take years. Someday soon, you'll be like, oh, I don't even do that anymore. You know?
The power of habit.
Exactly. And change takes time. So be patient, be kind, be gentle with yourself. Be compassionate to yourself and to others.
Awesome. With that being said, this has been another episode of Connected. Thank you, Dr. Trang Robinson, for coming on to the show. I appreciate you so much for sharing yourself to the world.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all next time. Peace.
Bye.
Awesome.